This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Regrow.
Hey, cannabis operators, got a couple questions for you. Are your SOPs tied directly to your cultivation plans? Can you easily manage your inventory and workforce and vendors from a single system? Can you manage compliance across multiple licenses and states? Do you have performance analytics to help you maximize your 24-month cultivation and manufacturing plans? If this is not the case, Regrow is there to help. They can help you maximize your yields and consistency. Think of Regrow as the single pane of glass view into your entire supply chain. They're available globally with native localization and foreign language support. So if you're a cannabis company searching for a strategic business partner to help you automate your business, scale effectively, and make the supply chain work for you, you can find Regrow at regrow.io. That's regrow.io. Regrow, the premier cloud-based cannabis supply chain management system. We are recording. I got this new setup. I think it feels. Does it look weird that I'm like looking up at you? I don't know if that's like.
No. I think it kind of works okay.
Okay. Well, anyway, Chuck Warner is in the house today. Cannabinoid Connect, sir. Thanks for making time for me on a Sunday. I really am excited to be talking with you. We're gonna have fun today,
dude. I'm super happy to be here, and thanks for asking me on.
Of course. First off, beautiful view you got there. Where are you currently at? What is this? Where are you?
Yeah,
beautiful.
So I'm in Denver. This is downtown Denver.
Okay.
And behind me looks kind of like Cloud City from Empire Strikes Back, but it's really we're on the 20th floor. And that is there's some buildings and stuff like that downtown Denver.
That's awesome, man. Cool. Is that where you're originally from? Denver? Or
no, I'm a Washington State guy, from the state of Washington back before it was cool. And then I spent, probably about 12 years in Tampa. So I developed a love for the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are playing later today, and then somehow settled in the middle in Colorado. So I've been here about 10 years. So I've gone coast to coast and kind of settled in the center, and also the home of some of the best cannabis regulations and cannabis business going on in the country.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that was going to be my next point, is that you found a good balance, right? From you've been on the East Coast, the West Coast, found that middle ground in Denver, and best place to be when it comes to cannabis. And, big reason why I mentioned I'm really excited to be talking with you today, Chuck, is because of how many hats you wear within the industry and how involved you are. And I'm super intrigued by it. I mean, you're the CEO of Innovative Properties Worldwide, the publisher of Cannabis and Tech TV, Cannabis and Tech Today. And then you're also the vice chair of the NCP, the National Cannabis Party, which I did do a tweet about to kind of get, people to tease this out. And there was a lot of interest with that. So we're definitely got to cover that. Yeah. And then your role as the CMO of STM Canna. So before we dive into all those different roles and where you're at today, like, where did this all come from, Chuck? How, why cannabis?
Yeah, good question. So I've always been a, kind of a fan of cannabis, or a, connoisseur, from back in the 90s, and, from getting a baggie from your guy at, Albertsons at 10 o'clock at night, from those days to fast forward where we are right now. So I've always been kind of a fan. I've been, a little bit of an advocate for it. I thought it was kind of weird that people got locked up and put in jail over a plant. And then ironically, I got into publishing. So I used to make the really nice programs for like the college bowl games, NASCAR, PGA. I did a whole bunch of sports publications, worked on like the World Series. So I got
you mean the marketing materials, right? Like you mean like everything involved with the agenda, or like things that you'd hand out to, I guess, attendees, visitors of those events?
Yeah, like the $20 program, when you go to that souvenir program that you get that is full of, ads from the sponsors. Right. I learned a long time ago how to, publish those, design those, sell the ads. And basically that's how I got my start into publishing.
Okay.
And so it was all sports. Then in about 2009, everything kind of changed in the world, and we had a real big economic downturn, and I kind of got out for a minute and then got back in and started doing tech magazines. We launched one publication called Innovation and Tech Today. Then that became a quarterly. We had that out there, kind of like all the CES stuff, like all that cool, cybersecurity and gaming and entertainment and all, great stuff.
The highlight stories, the trends,
Yeah, just all this cool tech that's out here. You had, wearables and, tablets and e-readers, and that's kind of where it was starting. And then eventually we were talking and we realized, man, we need to have a Cannabis and Tech Today. And so we spun that off from Innovation and Tech Today about 3 years ago, along with Residential Tech Today. So started in sports, got into tech, a big tech science, geek like that, but know how to make a good magazine. And the Cannabis and Tech Today really took off.
Yeah, I would imagine it wasn't as smooth of a transition at first because of the, I guess, unknowns within cannabis media at that time, right? I mean, it's one thing to cover tech, but then to jump into an industry like cannabis. Like, what did you kind of initially see in that transition?
That's a really good point. So there was two things that we had going. Number one, we're really good at having an idea and figuring out a way to make it happen. And so that idea was just kind of marinating for a while. This idea of Cannabis and Tech Today, that was there for a minute. And finally, we were just like, look, we're going to do this thing. It was kind of like ready, fire, aim. We're going to do this thing and we're going to launch it at MJ Biz Next. And we just we treaded on the Innovation and Tech Today name and let everybody know, hey, we're launching this in the cannabis space and it's going to be the same type of quality. And so from putting a magazine together and getting the content and getting the distribution, that was okay. We weren't sure how the cannabis industry was going to react. And ironically enough, they were really, really excited. I think that there's a lot of lifestyle publications. I think there's a lot of business publications. And I think the idea of having something dedicated to the tech, the science, and the innovation in the business was something that the business people wanted so that they could talk about their innovations and stuff like that. So it was actually really well received. And, ever since then, it's just been, it's allowed us to open a lot of doors because, we do good quality journalism. We do make good quality magazines. And it was an area that needed to be focused on.
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, the intersection between tech and cannabis is inevitable, and it's happening every day, right? And sometimes I think with so much innovation in our daily lives, people tend to overlook the fact that it is technology that's powering this stuff, right? It's just kind of becomes second nature. I mean, we live in a world now where we have AI within our households. We can ask, Alexa to turn on lights or turn on TVs. So yeah, I mean, what are some of the interesting trends that you're seeing in the intersection between tech and cannabis?
Well, then that's a good question, because a lot of people got it, but then there were some people that were like, tech and cannabis, what does cannabis have to do with tech? And it was like, okay, let's take it back for a second. I think that one of the good things about this was, number one, it gave a platform where we could talk about tech. We could focus on that kind of B2B, high-end B2C, what is going on in the cannabis industry. But the second, I think that the fact that we went from the mainstream, Innovation and Tech Today, to cannabis, it brought a little bit of kind of a combination of, it helped destigmatize and a little bit of legitimacy, right? So when Wired magazine or Forbes, writes about cannabis, we get excited in the cannabis industry because it's not just cannabis media. This is the mainstream, right? So us coming over, I think that we were embraced because we did have a good quality, publication and a reputation. And I think that the cannabis industry was excited. The events, the people that had stories to tell, obviously products and services. So, it was something that was due. And as far as, what we're seeing, I think that that's the beauty of it, right? Is that there is this whole story to be told beyond just kind of the lifestyle and beyond just the consumer side of cannabis, but man, there is so much happening so fast. We are witnessing the rise of terpenes. I think that is absolutely huge. The embrace of cannabinoids versus strains. I think that's something that we're seeing right now. I think that we're seeing leaps and bounds in the area of cultivation, utilization of artificial intelligence and a lot of the same technologies that they use for growing, other crops now being converted over here. I mean, I can tell you, this is kind of funny. We had a lot of advertisers in the mainstream publication, Innovation and Tech Today. And I told my sales guys, I was like, hey, listen, we're launching Cannabis and Tech. Don't tell our mainstream clients that we're doing this little side venture because we didn't know how they would respond. Right. So I told my salespeople not to tell them. So what do? Of course, they go and tell them. And we had all of these companies that were mainstream advertisers in the residential tech and in the smart home space and in the, kind of the CES type space that were like, that's great. We totally were looking for a way to get into this space.
See, and that doesn't surprise me in the one bit, because if you look, right, I mean, Amazon recently announced their new drug policy, right, where they're no longer testing for cannabis.
And we know that's just altruistic, right? Because they're just really nice people.
Oh, they're really, really nice people, and they're just doing the right thing, of course. Even though that their slogan in the past has been, what is it? Don't be evil.
Yeah, they make their drivers pee in a bottle so they stay on time. You know what I mean? Like they're no. I mean, you're right. It's self-serving.
It's self-serving, and but the private corporations see what's coming, right? Yeah. I mean, it's inevitable. So it would be in their best interest to align themselves with what's coming instead of fighting it. And I mean, that's why we're seeing it. And of course, we can spend all day talking about the federal government's, lack of movement in this area at this point. But no, it makes sense. Yeah, totally. So they were just willing to jump on, and they were happy with the pivot. And so you mentioned
they were curious. They were kind of curious, right. More than anything. They were like, we know this is coming, and we're wanting to not miss the boat. We already have a relationship with you and your guys. Tell us more, and so we had people actually flying down to our office in Denver and coming and meeting. I remember, 5 suits coming in and sitting down around our table, just being like, okay, here's what we've got. Tell us what you can do for us. And the cool thing was we made everything for Cannabis and Tech Today similar to Innovation and Tech Today, quarterly magazine, print and digital, B2B, high-end B2C, newsstand distribution, but also events, subscribers, and then a really big kind of digital push. So we made it so that our salespeople and everybody could wrap their heads around it. It was almost a clone, if you will. Cannabis pun. It was a clone of Innovation and Tech Today, and the advertisers were like, just how do we get involved? Tell us more.
Well, that makes sense. Why reinvent the wheel, right? Yeah. I mean, if it worked already, just emulate that model to this new topic and push forward, right? I mean, obviously
especially because the magazine business is a bloodbath right now. I mean, it's a pardon my French, it's a shit show. And the only magazines that are doing any good are niches, right? You've got to be in a niche where you've got kind of an endemic audience, you've got some kind of built-in distribution, and that is, niches are doing good. The big mainstream publications, not so much. So, the fact that we're in kind of niches, cannabis is a niche, then you go to the business and the tech side, right? And so all of a sudden you're in this kind of narrow window where we all know that advertising is tough in this space. Social media is a real pain in the neck. And so we had something where we could align really good content, again, with good call to action and advertising on the print and digital side. So yeah, it worked for us. We're very fortunate. But again, we put out good stuff, and I think that reputation, in a way, followed us over. And again, it's a really good niche to be in.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say the word like niche audience, right, or niche subject matter, and then versus mainstream publications, and how we're currently seeing that shift, right? Yeah. People are kind of departing from mainstream, and what I find interesting about that is we know this is happening. But still within mainstream, like obviously they wouldn't talk about it because that wouldn't be in their best interest, but it's almost like there's this projection of, no, things are good. Like we're still everything. And I'm just so curious to really like know what the viewership is, what the circulation is of some of these publications. I mean, what would you say? Like right now, is this the biggest trend that we've seen from departure of mainstream to more niche type independent journalism?
It's a really good point that you bring up, because the big publishers, the Hearsts and the the ones that have this giant catalog of magazines, they're slowly shuttering a lot of those titles. And so I think I just saw like People magazine, that you're used to seeing, with some celebrities and stuff like that they're going to stop doing print. There's been just a whole bunch, Newsweek and Sports Illustrated is gone, like rest in peace. I love Sports Illustrated. Playboy doesn't print anymore. I mean, these are iconic magazines that have not just been part of the magazine landscape, but they've been part of pop culture, right? I mean, Sports Illustrated was part of, growing up, and
sure,
and Playboy magazine, and all these, they're all kind of going digital. But ironically enough, it's the niche publications, right? It's the, Cat Fancy. It's the, these magazines, right? If you put out a publication dedicated to cat owners, you've got an endemic audience that is, I mean, come on, they're fans, right? They're super fans. So it seems like the niche publications where you have that built-in audience where you can speak directly to them, it works. But if you've got something that's just like, Sports Illustrated, right? I mean, you can get all that stuff online.
Exactly.
And I think that, same thing with like news publications. It's harder because if the magazine comes out once a month, sometimes that stuff is dated, it's old. So you've got to have, evergreen type content. I mean, we're a quarterly, right? So we've got to have stuff out there that, our magazine is on the Barnes and Noble for 90 days. It's got to still be relevant the last day it's there.
And high quality, right? I mean, that's what you put all your chips into, the quality, into the storytelling, probably, because
the photography, right, the tactile nature, people pick up our magazine and they go like, the first thing they do is they're like, wow, this is really nice. Like they feel it and they feel quality. And by the way, this is a little sneak preview. We got Pete Holmes, comedian, on the next issue of Cannabis and Tech. But yeah, and that's our formula, right? Celebrities on the cover, really high quality, so when they see it on the newsstand, they want to pick it up and spend, $12.99 or whatever.
It makes so much sense, man. And you know what? It shows how these different strategies play out, and yours makes so much sense because, again, we talk about the shelf life. It's their quarterly quality needs to be their longevity, right? Interest, high quality photos, as opposed to like, oh my gosh, when I think about the world of day-to-day journalism, right? Yeah. Like no wonder we're at where we're at today. And for those listening and watching, I mean, let's just kind of paint the picture here, right? We've entered a world where it's about clicks, right? It's about driving traffic from a social media page to a website for that viewer to then consume that content that's on the web page. Well, if a lot of competitors are doing that and no one's charging for it, well, it starts to become saturated, right? And then different tactics become implemented. And one of those tactics are clickbait tactics, where you want to write the most captivating headline, or you want to exaggerate some part of the story to really get somebody interested and to stop as they're scrolling, right? Yeah. And kind of, I think that's really how this has all been exacerbated at this point when it comes to journalism and this, phenomena of fake news now, because it's just all these publications are really battling for clicks and ultimate, website traffic.
Yeah, I feel like it's you've got two different areas there, which, by the way, if you think about it, it's why partisan news is so popular right now, because now they've got their niche, right? You're on the left, you're on the right, you've got your built-in
concentrated audience.
Yeah. It's a confirmation bias, right? People, oh, I love it. I love getting riled up about the same stuff every day. Let me click a like. Yep. And so that's one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is people are used to not paying for content. Remember when we first got the internet, man, everything was free and we were just running around. It was like, whoa, you know, you can just run around and click and like and subscribe. And now you're running into these things where you have paywalls, and you're running into these things where,
but who's really paying for those? I mean, I know that there are people that love those publications and subscribe to those. So there's the diehard fans.
Yeah.
And then there's corporations that pay licenses to those paywalls for their employees, right? But like, I don't know if the average millennial is paying for New York Times. Like,
they're not. And here's the deal. Then they're going to go to what they can get for free. And oftentimes that stuff is packaged up to look real, but it might not be, right? So they're not getting that quality of journalism. And, you know, that's why you found during COVID, you know, some of that stuff that was paywall protected, they would open it up because they figured it was probably like a public service, you know, but it's very murky out there. And one of the things that we're toying with here, which we think makes a lot of sense, is with our subscriptions, you know, to buy a subscription to the magazine, we're transitioning from just a subscription to a membership. And if you're a member, then you're kind of a supporter, right? And so we have different levels of this where you get the magazine, you get, you know, a discount in the store, you can get access to products earlier, you can be a product tester. We've got this Emerge virtual platform in the metaverse where we're going to have a bunch of events. You got a pass, you can create your avatar, run around in there, you know, catch some sessions, exchange some business cards. So what we're trying to do, we think that the membership model is kind of cool because it's the same thing as, you know, the Audubon Society, right? Or the, you know, the NRA or something like that. Like you pay the AARP, you're a member, you pay a certain amount, and then you get a whole bunch of benefits for that membership. And it kind of aligns with your identity. You know, they say one of the most powerful forces in the universe is to behave in accordance with your self-identity. So if we can get people that are, you know, cannabis and tech today people, or, you know, sustainability people, or, you know, whatever, and they're willing to throw, you know, we're not talking about a lot, maybe price of a cup of coffee a month, right? And they're willing to put that towards it, and we can give them enough stuff, then maybe we can afford to continue to put out good stuff, pay our writers, pay our designers, you know, pay all the people on the team, because at the end of the day, you know, I got 25 people over here and I've got to pay them all. So I can't just give away the content for free.
Yeah. Well, and membership implies community, right? I mean, and that's what you've built. I mean, you've built a concentrated audience, a community, and it's more than a subscription. It's more than content. And that's fascinating that you talk about events in the metaverse. So you guys really are focused on, you know, forward thinking digital, right? So like, that's
cannabis and tech, man. They'll laugh us out of the building if we're not trying some, you know, cool tech stuff, right?
Of course, yeah. And I mean, that's what's so fascinating about the opportunity with cannabis within the metaverse, right? Like you mentioned, like, of course, events. So we know that people in their own home could throw on that headset and like meet with friends in a virtual setting with an avatar of their choosing, which is really cool. But you can also, like, the ability to shop within the metaverse, like products, right? Like, let's talk about that for a second. I mean, is anybody doing that right now?
Yeah. So that's just it, man. Like during COVID, I felt like that was a bad word. I couldn't even say it, but during, you know, during the pandemic and that year and a half of just craziness, you know, myself and Andre Bork and, you know, some of my people, we were like, okay, these virtual events, they kind of suck. And virtual events is all we can have. How can we do a virtual event that doesn't suck? And we found this platform called Hyperfair. It was out of Belgium. We were one of the first people in the United States to use it for big, you know, events. We had 4 emerges, 3 auditoriums. We've had probably over 200 speakers. They're all the speakers that you see at MJ Biz and CWCBE and NCIA. I mean, we had content, like seriously, we had 12-hour days. It was grueling. We were like, okay, we got to pare this down. So we learned. But to your point, we've got merch shops in the metaverse in this world. We've got 3D renditions of products, so people could do product demos. One of our advertisers, Polyscience, because everything was all, you know, kind of weird, they were holding demos with prospects around the world in our metaverse universe, having them sign up, come in, create their avatar, walk to their booth and meet them. And then they could, you know, have like a Zoom screen. They can talk right into their microphone. You know, they could do stuff like in the real world and do product demos. Yeah. And so, yeah, we figured out how to kind of at least dip our toes in the water of being able to do cool stuff, without having to leave your home. And we had, the cool thing about these metaverse events is you get all the analytics, you get all the data, you get everything that sometimes you don't get at an in-person event. And we had 20,000 business cards exchanged person to person over the 4 Emerge events. And we actually had I had people come up to me and go, "Hey, Chuck, I signed up members. I got some business done here." And that felt so freaking cool that we had kind of thrown something together and tried to create something new to bring value to the audience. Check this out. We worked with the other events. We worked with the other media people. We went to everybody hat in hand and said, "Hey, we're trying to do this thing." We even approached other people and said, "If you want to sell sponsorships, we'll give you the money for what you sell." So we truly created something for the industry. And then afterwards, what we found out was, A, people were excited to get back to in-person events, but B, there's always going to be a place and probably a growing spot in the industry where we can use this metaverse type technology to network, get smart, and get business done. And that's what we will plan on continuing to do, where we're going to use this platform for the National Cannabis Party for like expungement clinics, voter registration. We can do a whole bunch of stuff to help people, get knowledge about this in the metaverse, because you can hop into the platform on your phone. You don't have to download anything. You can do it from your laptop. So it makes it accessible. You don't have to deal with travel restrictions, price of gas, visas, all that stuff. So we think that moving forward, there's definitely a place here, but at the same token, we're really excited that in-person events are back as well. We don't feel like they have to compete. We feel like that they can complement each other. And I think you're seeing a lot of hybrid events now that you didn't see before.
Right. Yeah, they can coexist. I mean, hey, there needs to be options for people. And you blew my mind with the voter registration opportunities within the metaverse. I mean, whoa. Okay. Talk about, or advocacy when it comes to cannabis reform or legalization among the federal government or even within your state. That is game changing, right? I mean, and think about the opportunities for the disabled, right? The accessibility for people that can't get to, the voting blocks, or they can't get to the area where they
a rally or a town hall, right?
Yeah.
But they want to participate and have their voice heard. Yeah, that's why we're trying to really explore how we can do that, schedule these up, and with the help of some of our partners, we can facilitate this, and we can use this metaverse type platform to help the whole community, And I think that would be great. Like we've had marketing workshops before, like cannabis marketing, we know is a little tricky. And we worked with Grasslands, Ricardo Baca, we put together a killer marketing workshop, 1-day workshop. I mean, amazing content that you would pay, $100 to go to. It was just in the metaverse. You didn't have to fly. You didn't have to do anything. So I think that we can bring value to the industry, industry to industry. The National Association of Cannabis Business had their diversity workshop in there. So we can do stuff like that. We've worked with Minorities for Medical Marijuana, Last Prisoner Project. So every time we did something, and this was kind of part of our formula too, we always had some involvement from some nonprofits or some, what we like to call our social impact partners, so that way it wasn't just about us getting together and trying to make some money. It was about doing some good. And if we make some money along the way, hey, that's cool.
It's a win-win. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that secret sauce, of making sure you include that in there, because then you've got an element of purpose, right? And that I think is something that's important in this industry, and I'm sure most of your listeners would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the pillars that most companies should have, right? A stake in the ground, something that they put in, that they stand for in this industry, because cannabis touches so many different issues, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Chuck, I want to switch gears and talk to you about the recent trip that you had at the UN. In fact, that's kind of what sparked this whole kind of discussion. Of course, I'm a big fan of following you on Twitter. You're very positive. You're always putting out good content and uplifting people in the community. And I saw that you had visited the UN. And I understand that the UN is more open to cannabis dialogue, as of recent. So, tell us a little bit about that, and if that intersects with the National Cannabis Party, and that's the reason why you're there, then set the stage and just give us the whole background.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I'm on the board of the National Cannabis Party, and then also Regennabis. Regennabis is a member organization that is it's kind of very similar to Sustainable Brands for the mainstream businesses, which is where they all get together and they discuss how they can utilize sustainability, not just in a nice to talk about, hey, let's ride a bike to work one day a year, hey, we'll plant a tree. No, sustainability is really strategic and it's bottom line oriented, and it's super smart for companies to do in the mainstream world as well as in the cannabis and hemp world. That's where Regennabis comes in. So, they brought their expertise from the Sustainable Brands world, where you've got companies like P&G and, Nestle and, all these big companies that realize, hey, sustainability's got to be more than lip service. And they're establishing that in the cannabis space. And we've got some really big players. The guys that have, started it, Jeff and Patrick, have just really done a marvelous job of helping companies come up with solutions and ways to actually work towards sustainable development goals, ESGs, things that are important beyond just like the surface level. And one of the things that they wanted to do, because they have always had kind of a global outlook at Sustainable Brands, is they wanted to have this event at the United Nations where, they'd invite, 150, 200 people from around the world. It was kind of a who's who in the cannabis space, a nice cross section of, there were some MSOs there. There were some associations, organizations, a lot of, representation from the minority community. There was a lot of women speakers and panels. So it was, they did a really nice job of making sure we had a nice cross section, some diversity. And, they even started the whole thing off. It was a whole day long event at the UN in New York. Really, really cool setting. Like just, you could kind of feel the history as you were coming in there. And it's the freaking UN, it's kind of a big deal. And UN hasn't always been friendly to cannabis or hemp. And, that stigma that we've dealt with in the US, that shit was worldwide. That was not just here. That caught fire everywhere and people were going to jail for it and hemp was demonized. So it was really cool to come in here. And when the event started and we were all sitting there and, we had our coffee and our notebooks and we're ready to start this thing and get our sessions, the first thing that Jeff did was he went up there and he made a statement acknowledging their privilege, that you have a white guy standing up here talking to everybody on land that was at one point Native American land. And they came out and just like laid their cards on the table and were like, listen, we acknowledge our bias. We acknowledge our privilege, on this land that we're here. I just thought it was a really cool way to start it off because there's a lot of cynicism in the cannabis industry. You've seen it. People try to do good and the haters come out of the woodwork and they just, oh yeah, look at this. There's, and I guess you have that in every industry, right? Especially right now. It's an interesting time on social media. It's an interesting time in the Twitterverse.
The keyboard warriors are out for sure.
Oh, and even when you try to do good, you try to be an ally, they will come at you and tell you how you're not doing it right and how you're a piece of crap and you should have no opinion. So I thought it was really cool that they came out, and it was sort of like in the movie 8 Mile, when Eminem is like, I am a piece of crap. I do live in a trailer. I do, and then he gives him the mic and he's like, now tell him something they don't know about me. And the guy didn't have anything to say. I just think it's a really cool way to sort of start out by acknowledging privilege, acknowledging bias, and then saying, hey, we're coming hat in hand. And they had speakers from around the world. We had to wear the little earpiece that you see in the movies with the translator while they're speaking in different languages. I felt like Jason Bourne, man. Like it was really cool to be a part of that. And it just felt like, to kind of summarize, there was some great networking. There were people that got together. You couldn't leave. There was really nowhere to go. So you were there for the whole day and you had people meeting and talking about actual activation and things that they could do that was spurred on from this. So, it was a day, there were panels, there were speakers, there was all this stuff, there was videos, but really, I think one thing that was cool about it was, and the way that I felt, and a lot of people did, was you got fired up. Like it lit a fire that we've all had burning, but sometimes it burns at different temperatures. That thermostat goes up and it goes down. And I just felt like, when we'd get a break or we'd go outside, people were on their phones, they were calling back. They were like, it was just almost a renewed sense of purpose, passion, and then strategy. It was about what can we do? And you were in a room with a bunch of people where you could get shit done. And that to me was what was really unique about it. And what was cool is, I don't know, we definitely have to look it up, if or when they've had an all-day event, at the United Nations focused on ESGs, cannabis and hemp, but it's definitely got to be a big game changer. And the fact that we had all these big players from everywhere there, and then you saw, on LinkedIn and social media and Facebook and stuff, this was a big deal. And when it was posted, it was really well accepted. And I think it was a big deal. It was kind of like, hey, we're here, we're not going anywhere. And this was kind of almost like it was a statement, almost like a coming out party at the United Nations, to say that we're not just stopping in the US, we're not just stopping in North America. This is truly something that affects people worldwide. And here's the benefits and what we can do and how we can help people get out of poverty and how hemp can solve these problems. And, climate change, like the Sustainable Development Goals are 17 different areas. And it's about how cannabis and hemp can help in those and align with the United Nations message, which our mission, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, any awareness, especially at that level, right? The global stage at the UN is huge. And, there's a lot going on in the world right now. So when cannabis gets its moment like that, those are wins that should be celebrated. And that's so awesome that the UN and members of the UN are willing to hear the community and hear the industry out. And I would imagine, so it was a day-long event, you said? Which that's amazing in itself, right? And as we know, I mean, there is so much to cover within cannabis and hemp, right? I mean, so like, what would you say were kind of the main focus areas? I know that sustainability was the overall topic, right? But from an education standpoint, I mean, how far were you guys able to get? And talking about sustainability, we know that hemp takes in the most CO2 of any plant. So, I mean, was that kind of discussed? And if so, what were their thoughts on just the fact that how organic this plant is to begin with?
Yeah. And that's a really good question. So it's not like, we didn't have an audience with, like you see in Superman, where you've got all the representatives from, all the different countries and everything like that. We weren't in that big circular room. We were off to the side. It was live streamed. There were members in attendance, and there were, it was streaming and stuff. So, it felt like in the beginning, it was kind of like us, talking to us, and somebody said, hey, we're kind of preaching to the choir here, but it was more. And it was the fact that we were there. It was the fact that it tied in internationally. We had speakers from, we had what's that? Malta. We had Malta. The leader from Malta was there. We had people from Central America. So there was a cross section of speakers. And to your point, it was how hemp and cannabis can help with these areas. These sustainable development goals, and how it is a worldwide thing, how people are still locked up for it, how this plant can do so much to help with climate change. So it's kind of the topics that you would expect to see. And it all had sort of instead of just a regional or local kind of feel, it was definitely a worldwide kind of dialogue, because again, it's the freaking United Nations, what I mean? It's not just about what's going on in Pittsburgh or what's going on here. It was world, and it kind of, I think it was nice to bring that all together and make you realize that this isn't just a United States issue. This isn't just a North America thing. This is going to affect a lot of people, millions and millions of people, depending upon how quickly it's embraced and utilized. And again, there's a lot of stigma, and there's a lot of laws still against it.
No, that is the perfect networking, thought leadership sharing opportunity, right? Where you get that global perspective, people from different countries. So, I mean, that's amazing that you were a part of that, man. And
super grateful, just to be there. Yeah.
it sounds like it. And so thank you for sharing that. And I do want to switch gears now and talk specifically about, the US and
Yeah.
it comes to cannabis reform. And as I mentioned earlier in this episode, uh, the National Cannabis Party, we got a lot of questions about that when I was teasing this episode out. So tell us a little bit about, that party and its overall mission. And yeah, we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the National Cannabis Party, we found out about it. Actually, we did a story, probably about a year ago or something. It was our cover with Redman on the cover. He's one of the co-founders of it, and it's the first FEC registered party that is dedicated to endorsing and electing candidates that are pro-cannabis. The beautiful thing about the National Cannabis Party is you can still be a Republican, you can still be a Democrat, you can still be an independent, but you can also support the National Cannabis Party because we are, kind of like an organization, that is bipartisan. We will endorse a candidate anywhere as long as we think that they fit with what we want our platform to be, and that platform is pro cannabis, pro sustainability, pro expungement, things like this. And kind of everything that we're fighting for and that we talk about on your podcast, in my magazines, everything that's what this platform is all about. So when you say the National Cannabis Party, the cool thing about it, and we've only been around for about a year, but the cool thing about it is people get it, right? Like, I don't know if it's just the name, I don't know what it is, but you say National Cannabis Party and they're like, okay. So what we want to do is we want to build this network where we have members, so many members that, if politicians are going to vote against the Safe Banking Act, we want to be able to bite them in the ass. If politicians are going to vote against, expungement or something like that, we want to be able to hurt them, because in politics, if you don't have the ability to, I guess for lack of a better word, punch somebody in the face to get them to vote with you, they won't do it. And that's the problem with cannabis, is they don't have the money lobbying in Washington that say, guns do, or big oil does, or big pharma does, or whatever. And everything's run by money. So what we've got to do with the National Cannabis Party is we've got to raise a lot of money. We've got to endorse candidates. We just endorsed our first candidate, Jumaane Williams, for the governor of New York. And that happened the same weekend as the UN event. And so we had National Cannabis Party people there meeting with, the Steve D'Angelos and the MSOs and stuff. So that was really cool. But I think the most important thing for us with the National Cannabis Party is get people involved, be able to generate funds and be able to get in there, endorse candidates, have our endorsement matter. But most importantly, get people out there to vote, get them registered, get stuff expunged, and get them involved in the political process so that we can have a voice, and get people that aren't necessarily in our tent to be aware of this and to be part of it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure all the voters that read Cannabis and Tech Today, that read High Times, they're going to vote for the pro-cannabis candidates. They get the National Cannabis Party. What we've got to do, I think, is reach outside. We got to find veterans, right? We've got to find veterans that can benefit from this. We've got to find, people, moms, right? We've got to find, people out there that maybe aren't thinking of cannabis as a voting issue, and get them to come on board with us, because that's what you've got to have, right? You got to have voters and you got to have money. And ultimately that is the goal of the National Cannabis Party, is to be legitimately taken seriously, so that we have, basically our politics and our Congress is a mess, man. It's got some serious problems right now. Yeah. We got to figure out how to navigate that and still get done what polls at above 70%, which is getting cannabis decriminalized, legalized, getting people out of jail for it. And we think that this is something people can really rally behind, and it is relatively bipartisan. There's not very many issues out there that are bipartisan, anymore.
Right,
It really has become so polarized. So we got to capitalize on this, and we've got to utilize, we've got Montel Williams as our chairman. We've got Redman is one of our co-founders. We've got Safita is our president. She's amazing. Safita Artist Mills. So we've got a lot of great people, and we're getting more under this tent, but we're just kind of in the early stages of getting this rolling. And I'm excited to be a part of it, because I think it's something that, politics is a, man, it's a crazy thing, but it's also an interesting thing, for some people. So for us to be able to finally have a voice and have a seat at the table that's pro cannabis and pro hemp, I think is something that is long overdue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's a deep bench that you guys have there of cannabis leaders. And
yeah,
I totally see where you're coming from. I mean, we've gotten to a point where, like you said, it's a bipartisan issue. There's the most support that America has ever seen at this point, especially for just one given topic. Yeah.
Can you believe how far it's come? Like, would you even have thought of this, say,
I did.
20 years ago?
I mean, not when I was in college. I remember having a discussion with one of my roommates, and I was like, "Oh, it'll be legal eventually." And the one guy was like, "No, it won't." And I was like, "Oh yeah. It'll in our lifetime." I said, "It'll be federally legal." And I will never forget that, because he was so adamant. Like, no, it won't.
I think you're more optimistic than me, because like when I was in college, late 90s, still buying from the baggie, from whatever. I don't know if I was as optimistic. It just seemed like the whole world was against it. And you know what I mean? It seemed like it was just a fringe. It was, kind of normal. I remember, being a early organization, that stood out for it. Obviously High Times, big pop culture, but it still was such a niche. It was such a niche. And now it is not so much of a niche anymore. Now you've got, old people that are able to get off medicine because of, cannabis. Like my grandma was taking so many different meds before she passed last year. My grandma was taking so many different things. And we've all heard the story a ton of times, and it was interacting with each other. And there were times she was in and out of it. She was just in la la land, because she started taking CBD and she started doing that. She was able to get off some of those medications, and they were able to, pare down what she was taking, and she felt better. She was happier. Plus, she thought it was really cool that she was taking cannabis, like she was like, like 90 years old and like bragging about how she had the CBD cream. So I think that you've got that element. You've got veterans. This really helps veterans a lot. I'm a veteran. And the fact that, we have 22 veterans a day that commit suicide, and they go to the VA because they've got problems, and they give them pills that sometimes on the bottle says may cause suicide is insane.
Yeah.
And they're finding that when they can get cannabis through collectives, through, groups, through whatever, not only does the cannabis help them, maybe anxiety, PTSD, some stuff like that. But one of the cool things that I've found is when they smoke cannabis with other veterans, you know what they do, Kevin?
What?
They talk. They talk. And it's therapeutic. They talk about the stuff that they saw, that they went through, that they're dealing with.
All the stuff that they're holding inside, they let it out.
And it's a benefit, that sometimes maybe gets overlooked. So, again, going back to that community, you've got a lot of people across a lot of sections. And by the way, veterans, is you would think is a pretty bipartisan thing, right? Everybody likes to hold up the veterans and we're pro veterans, until you have to actually do something for them.
Totally. Right.
And so we're like these pawns, but you've got veterans, you've got older people that can get off their medicines. You've got, there's a whole lot of stigma with the mental health community. And there's just a lot of, I think, regular people that are finding benefits to cannabis. Or even if they don't use cannabis, there's a whole bunch of people that see the benefits to hemp, as far as, building materials and just all the different uses there. So I think it's a wide enough tent that we can have with the National Cannabis Party, to where we've got to be able to get politicians to take notice and respect this voting block. And therein lies the challenge, is letting them know that we do matter, our votes matter, our money matters, because otherwise, what politicians do is they go, yeah, cannabis, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm cool with it. But when it comes time to vote, there's no consequences if they vote against cannabis, as we've seen how many times with the Safe Banking Act.
Right. You make such a great point there. It's not enough to just like advocate and
casually be for it.
Yeah, you have to, like with these elected officials, you have to arm them with information and education so that they can't overlook it. They can't overlook the benefits. They can't overlook the economic impact that it'll have. They can't overlook the environmental, right?
Jobs.
Benefits, the jobs.
I mean, it wins on so many levels.
And that's what's important, and that I think is the dirtiest trick that the devil pulled in the whole war on drugs scheme, right? And it's not just cannabis, but like psilocybin also, but we'll talk about cannabis, is that this plant got put into a lump of all these different hardcore narcotic drugs. And to your point earlier, right, you're like, well, at the time I wasn't as optimistic because there was so much negative sentiment around it. There was so much, and that's the dirtiest trick that they pulled. They fooled everyone to think that this plant is bad and it's like those, where in fact that's the complete opposite. And I published an episode that just came out with Cody Guy. He's a brain cancer survivor, and he talks about how the government patented synthetic cannabinoids, right? We know all this, but he actually showed me the list. There's 52 conditions that they list, and it basically touches everything. I mean, it's insane, right? So there's the devils, they're playing two sides of this game.
100%.
Yeah.
And so are the big corporations that are sitting on the sideline right now. I mean, let's have an uncomfortable conversation. Like, do you think that the MSOs right now are gung-ho for legalization?
No.
Because right now they got kind of, they're the king of the hill, and they can run stuff, and they can, you know what I mean? So I wonder, and this is not to be disparaging of them, because we're going to need MSOs, just like we're going to need the mom and pops, just like we're going to need the media, the association. We got to all come together. We got to get hemp and cannabis together. There's a little bit of a disconnect, from that world. We've got to get the Humboldt with the suits. I mean, that's going to be a big lift right there too. But eventually, we've got to all come together if we want this to happen. And right now, the way the status quo is, I think, is benefiting some operators in the space. They like being the big kahuna and having all this almost like a monopoly.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. And
kind of sucks, doesn't it?
I mean, hey, that's the reality of what it is. You're right. Yes. And it will shift. It's going to shift, right? But I think you're right. I think that like there is a need for all these different sizes of companies, right? Like I don't want to just go to one Walmart and buy my cannabis. I want to go just like how craft brewery is, right? Or just like how there's vineyards in Napa Valley. I want to go to 100%. And that, I think we'll get there. But yeah, I mean,
Cody Sanchez said, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but Cody Sanchez brought up a really good point, because we talked to her at Emerge. She's super smart, knows all about investing in business.
Contrarian thinker. Yeah,
contrarian thinker, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that she brought up, because I was like, all these companies in cannabis should be like kumbaya and, holding hands and doing the right thing and stuff. And she's like, look, at the end of the day, corporations are neither inherently good or bad, right? They're not going to all be one way or the other. I mean, they want to make a profit and they want to make money, and that's what corporations do. And so for us to be like, oh, they've got to do this and they've got to have that and stuff. I mean, it sounds great, but it's probably not going to be that way right off the jump. It's going to take a little bit of time, and we're working to get there. But yeah, I mean, corporations are going to corporate, right? They're going to do what they do,
especially publicly traded companies, right? I mean, that is the name of the game. Like all your job is at that point when you're publicly listed is to increase the share price and make your stakeholders happy. Make your share, that is the bottom line. And the business decisions dictate that, and
100%.
And I mean, hey, call it good, call it bad. That's just the reality of it. But I wanted to get back to your point though, because I had something to dive in more about it. Like you mentioned the MSOs, you mentioned kind of where the difficult conversation, but like, I don't know, I can't remember what else you said there. Anyway.
Yeah, no, and I apologize. I probably jumped in, because I get so excited but I think that this is where we are right now. It's not going to be any faster than we want. It's not, it's come a long ways, right? What do we have now? We have at least medical in like 38 states.
I think it's 35. I think it's 35 states medical, 19 adult use.
Yeah.
And then like high 30s for decriminalized states as well. So it's well on its way. The states are going to lead this, I think, all the way through. I think we're both in agreement on that. I mean, it's going to be where, more than half of the states, so over 25, will at that point be adult use, to where the federal government's going to need to start proactively moving to reform, because they're going to be
really
forced.
Would help though if they could do stuff interstate. Like, I get it, it's kind of like there's a whole bunch of people talking about Roe versus Wade right now and it coming back to the states. I get it, letting the states decide, but this is something that, kind of like a pandemic, it doesn't stay in a state, right? Like it's this, money needs to transfer, products need to transfer, so it almost feels like eventually there's got to be at least a decriminalization on the federal level, because once that happens, whether they legalize or they decriminalize, that's when the gold rush is going to happen. That's when the mad rush is going to happen. That's when everybody's going to jump in. Right now, a lot of these big players are sitting on the sideline. They're not going to come in because it's a state by state thing.
That's true. And that's very interesting when you say that, because you're right. When descheduling happens, like, that's where interstate commerce is going to happen, because federally, boom, the curtain is lifted, right? But it's so interesting right now, because you look at how states are doing it state by state, and it's like they're like their own little entities, right? It's weird, right? It's so kind of weird. But then when that happens, all that's just going to vanish.
Yeah. Like somebody said once, we're the only industry that's like, please tax us, like legalize us, tax us, right? And they, okay, settle down with those taxes, right? We're getting a little crazy, and I don't know how it's going to work when it goes on the federal, but it's got to eventually happen, right? I mean, the fact that you still can't, businesses can't declare bankruptcy. I've heard people denied home loans. We had our Stripe account shut down. We don't even touch the plant, and we had our Stripe account shut down because we're cannabis and tech today, just the word. So again, until there's something federal, we're still going to have to deal with this stuff. We still got advertising restrictions, right? Google doesn't want to, Google and Facebook and everything like that, they're just following the law. As much as it pisses us off, they have, and like you said earlier, they have shareholders to answer to. They've got a legal team. That's why they keep shutting our damn accounts down. It's because they're covering their ass.
I know it's so annoying. I was saying earlier on another podcast that my ad account is like disabled. Facebook, and I almost got past it, Chuck. I you know how you have to submit it for review, and then they approve the ad. Well, they approved it the first time, and I wasn't happy with some of the targeting parameters. So stupid me, I went in and changed it, and after it was approved, and then it has to go through resubmission again. And the second time they flagged it, they're like, cannabis, nope. And then they didn't even give me a warning. It was done. Like
same exact thing with me, bro. We were doing an ad for Cannabis and Tech today. I think it was a subscription or promoting a post or something like that. They denied it. I came back. I said, look, we're a publication. We're media, all about destigmatizing and the medical aspects. They approved us. The freaking gates were open. It was like, And all of a sudden, man, the clicks and the like were going through. And my dumbass, oh, I got to go put some more money in there. So I go in and alter it. And then they're like, and now all my magazines are banned because they're under this one umbrella with IPW. And they've like, shadow banned us, or they've done something. Yeah. So I got greedy, and that's what happens.
Well, so those listening, if you have, that's like a learning, I guess, then, right? Yeah. So maybe cannabis publications, cannabis content, can get through that first time, guys. So maybe try it, check it out. And but if not, my plan is just to create a whole new ad account and just start over.
I'm telling you, we're resourceful people. There's going to be workarounds, but same thing. My other company, STM Canna, we make pre-roll automation equipment, right here in the USA. This is my hometown of Spokane, Washington. The people behind this company I've known since I was, back in high school and college. And it's really cool that we're making this great equipment that's helping in the pre-roll category, which is, I think, number 2 behind flower, right? You've got flower, the number 1 category, and then pre-rolls are right there. People love pre-rolls. But pre-rolls are time consuming and expensive for people to make. So we've got this equipment that, grinds it up without beating the shit out of it, keeps your trichomes intact. We've got the rocket box, which is really well known as being able to fill like 452 cones.
I'm mesmerized by watching those videos.
Dude, it's so cool.
Yeah.
And then we've got this new, this weighing pad where you can actually weigh every single joint and look up on a screen, and it'll let you know if any of them is above or beyond what the parameter is it has to be. So you can just pull those out and redo them. And then we've got a new closer that like closes them and puts them in. So they're all modular pieces, but they really help people in the industry try to be able to be profitable and sell pre-rolls, because it's a big category. And again, it's that like we were talking about, dude, we get hit all the time with warnings from our YouTube channel, and we're not even, again, there's nothing being burned, there's no smoke, it's just material going in a cone. It's this, and they come at us and they're like, one more time, we will shut you down. And it's like, how do we tell our story? How do we get out? We can't use YouTube. We can't use, Instagram. I mean, we do. And STM Canna, I'd encourage people to go check it out and follow. But we are on that razor's edge like everybody else out there. And we make freaking manufacturing equipment, just food grade steel and some smart chips and everything like that. And they want to ban us too.
Isn't that so weird? Isn't that so weird? You can't even talk about it, like, let alone videos, right? I get that you're showing the material, but even like from your other perspective, cannabis and tech today, or it's just like, it's content, it's education, it's like
First Amendment, right? It's freedom of speech. And that's how High Times probably could publish, in the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. And was so iconic that you could distribute it even in a place where cannabis was illegal. I'm assuming that's that First Amendment thing, but boy, it doesn't carry a lot of weight in this day and age in the social media world. And I guess it's because it's kind of like the Elon Musk thing, right? Bitching about Twitter and free speech and stuff like that, even though it's federally illegal, like you can't even talk about it on their platforms. And it's because their platforms have their terms of service. I don't know. It's just a really slippery slope. And it just seems like we, take one step forward, 2 steps back with shadow bans, with content being, shut down. I bet 10 people that have had their Instagram accounts shut down and no repercussion, no way to get it back.
Yeah, I go to cannabis conferences. Like I'll moderate like a panel on marketing, and this is so different than any other industry I've ever been in, but it makes sense. The guy will be like, my best practice or my recommendation would be to have 2 different backup accounts, because you're going to probably get shut down, and make sure you have the other name. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But like, you got to do the underscore, or you have to do the weird symbol, like the numbers, or like just to
do. We're on the same playing field as the OnlyFans.
Yeah, it's so strange.
We're on the same, exactly. That's what they have to do. The people that have the OnlyFans, the models, the cam models, everything like that, they have to have their backup. Isn't it weird that they've put us on that same field with people selling like pictures of their feet?
And it's that clumping into just one category. Oh, it's a vice industry. Put it in sex or alcohol, or whatever it is.
NFTs. So our MailChimp just got hit. We've got with Innovation and Tech Today, we've got a new column and a newsletter called Crypto NFT Today, right? Just, the latest stuff on Web 3.0, NFT, crypto, letting people know what's going on. Seems pretty harmless, right? MailChimp comes and is like, hey, we will shut your ass down if you're putting stuff out here about freaking crypto and NFTs.
What? But you know what is interesting? I watched the documentary last night on George Carlin, and it was actually really good.
Dude, he is a genius.
He was a genius, and I'm
on ahead of his time.
Yeah, no spoilers because I'm on part 2, but I watched part 1, and what was fascinating that I saw was that in the 60s, late 60s, like humans repeat history, right? Because we live in a time now where we're seeing censorship, we're seeing our First Amendment rights kind of threatened and whatnot. But this has happened before. Like in the 60s, Carlin was arrested for being on stage for cursing and using obscenities when that was a law in the late 1960s. Like if you were publicly speaking and using profanity, officials could arrest you. And, that obviously changed in the late 70s in the transition. But my point is that like there were laws, when our parents were alive that were censorship, that were, so humans repeat themselves. We just need to fight the fight. Like
trying to go back. Right. It feels like we're almost trying to go back, that these things are, we know it's a pendulum and it swings this way and that way and everything, but it's almost like, you hear about this glorification of the good old days. We got to get back to the good old days and, the Make America Great and, everything like that. And I get it. Sentimentally, I get it. But there is a lot of kind of, let's get back to those laws and let's get back to those things that I don't know if necessarily that's what everybody wants. I don't know, but it's, you're right. Like some things, it seems like we're going, one direction and then we're going the other on free speech and, what you can say and you can't say. And of course, again, cannabis, that's a big area.
I don't see forward thinkingness. You're right. Like instead of thinking about how we can implement laws in the future that help us kind of grow and thrive in a new economy, we tend to go back. And not even just in policy, but even like entertainment. Like we see movies, the same remake, the same, or we see a sequel or the third movie of this one. Like do
you think people are just afraid of change? Like overall, I'm not saying, early adopters. And of course, there's always going to be some people but overall, like when things start changing a lot, it freaks people out.
I think so. I think that change is scary to most people for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times they'll just vote for the status quo, or they'll just vote for, not doing that thing because it sounds kind of scary or different.
Sounds risky. It's different. I don't know if I want to. Yeah. And people like what they're comfortable with. Right. So. But hey, we live in a world now where things are ever changing,
They say the one constant that you can count on is change, right? And
that's right.
You either figure out a way to roll with it or you're going to be really uncomfortable because, it is happening fast. And especially, like we're talking about technology, we're talking about innovation, these things are happening so quick that it's almost like science fiction can't keep up with where we are right now, because we're 3D printing body parts. We're, what I mean? Like they just got done mapping the human genome. You know what I mean? Like there's some cool stuff happening and it's like happening quickly. You think we'll go to Mars in our lifetime?
Yes.
Probably, right?
Yes, I think so. I think that we'll definitely go to Mars. And then like at the end of our lifetime, they'll be like talking about colonizing and like trying to set up bases out there and
growing weed on Mars, man.
Growing weed on Mars. Yeah. Can you imagine buying your weed from Mars and having it shipped? That would be so cool.
First intergalactic planet 13 on freaking Mars. Come on.
That's gonna be good. When that happens, you're gonna have you on, and we'll smoke that weed from Mars in the metaverse,
bro.
Yeah.
Imagine how fast they grow on some of these planets.
Those nutrients have to be out of this world, literally. Yeah.
No, but I think it's really cool. I think it's a fun time. I think it's a crazy time. I think that it's a little bit of everything, and it's just up to us to kind of, create the change that we want, and, make sure that we're supporting those that are out there trying to do the right thing. And, just making sure that we know that our voices matter. Everybody listening, your voice matters, your vote matters, your dollar matters, right? When you buy something in the dispensary and they're using sustainable packaging versus something else, it truly does matter. And so, we'll just keep on fighting the good fight, bringing good content that inspires and informs, and hopefully, we can be a part of the change we want to see. And a lot of good can come out of this. Let's get those people out of jail. Let's help these veterans, that could use this. Let's make it so that politicians on both sides of the aisle see the benefits of, this is just another industry, and stop treating it like, Nixon did. And I think that there's a lot of really good that can happen. I think that we've just got to, we got to stay on the ball, and we've got to keep our eye on the people that pull the levers of power, because if we don't, they're not going to do what we want. They're going to do what they want and what the special interests want. And that is where, it becomes a slippery slope. Like, this issue polls good. Why can't we get it done? Right? Biden said when he was coming in, he was going to, let the people out. He's done nothing. Trump, I don't think, was a very big friend of cannabis from the things that you see. He's just against any kind of, drugs or anything like that. So when are we going to actually have a friend, in the White House that is going to do some stuff for us? Maybe it'll be the next, election cycle. I don't know, but we just got to keep the pressure going, and we've got to keep, fighting that good fight. And I think that through podcasts like yours, other media people out there, events, all this stuff, if we just keep going where we're going, good things are going to happen. I just think that we're all a little impatient, and it doesn't happen overnight. Our Congress is about 2 shades slower than pond water.
That's absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. Manage your expectations, keep being aggressive, keep pushing, keep being consistent. And, to your point, Chuck, as we wrap up, how can people get involved with the National Cannabis Party? If they want to endorse and seek out those candidates that are big proponents of cannabis reform and legalization.
Yeah, that's a great question. Just Google, National Cannabis Party, go to nationalcannabisparty.org, sign up, get involved, make sure that you follow as well, Cannabis and Tech Today, follow us on social media. We've got a podcast called Cannabis Tech Talks. We talk to a lot of the same people and stuff, but really, just follow the media, get involved, see what you can do locally, and we'll keep on, bringing ways that people can follow the National Cannabis Party, follow on social media. And again, feel free to, if they want, follow me, find me on Twitter, Chucko24. I am going to talk a little bit about sports. I'm going to talk a little bit about my Seahawks and the Lightning, but definitely there's a lot of science. There's a lot of business stuff. Try to keep it positive. And, don't forget, we've also got LinkedIn, Facebook. So you got Cannatech. We've got the National Cannabis Party. Don't forget Regennabis. Those are the guys that brought us to the UN. They have a social media page. And again, anybody out there in the world of pre-rolls, STM Canna, some of the best in the biz, made in the USA. And again, you can follow on social as well at STM Canna. On Twitter and every other, the MySpace and the Facey space and
all of the spaces and the books. Yes.
Yeah, right. the Facebook.
I'll be sure to put those links in the description box. Chuck, my friend, this was fun. Thank you so much for coming on. I want to have you back on again real soon. And yeah, man, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Big fan of what you do too. You're super positive. I love following you, especially on Twitter. If you guys aren't following him on Twitter, make sure that you do. What's your Twitter handle?
It's Kevin L. Carrillo.
Okay. Yeah. Follow him. I get up in the morning. He's one of those accounts. It's like, hey man, let's make it a big day. Here's to having a good day. Look, I need that shit in my life. Okay. There's enough negative stuff out there. I need to follow some positive people. So really appreciate what you do. You have a ton of great guests on, every week I see that. You're very interactive with the community, and yeah, hopefully people that want to get involved, just reach out to us. And I think we're all really, really collaborative.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the kind words, Chuck. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Peace.